Welcome everyone to Greennomics World. Today we are going to organize this webinar on blockchain and cryptocurrency for peer-to-peer energy trading. We are lucky enough to have James and I keep forgetting the name, but yeah, it's okay. I'm just they'll introduce themselves. So from Power Ledger, we are really lucky enough to have them here. Today the agenda is we are going to have a good discussion on blockchain and cryptocurrency in energy. Then we'll have few business models. So Power Ledger is here, so they will be explaining us all the details about energy as a market and how blockchain and digital currency can be used for various applications from peer-to-peer transition and everything. Then implementation ability of this blockchain and technology in developing and undeveloped countries, whether there is any business model available on that also. Power Ledger will put some insights. Also, we are going to have on a discussion apart from the renewables and as there is a lot of innovation is going on storage and EV platform as well apart from the grid and renewables and solar. So on that also we'll have some discussions. Then now over to James and his colleague from Power Ledger to introduce themselves, and then they will have a presentation from their studio on various aspects of cryptocurrency and blockchain. Then I request all our viewers from around the globe to ask questions on those lines. So we'll put forward all the questions to Power Ledger for answer. And now I'll ask James and his friend to introduce themselves and start the presentation.
Yeah, so hello everybody, I'm James Eggleston, Business Development from Power Ledger. This is my colleague.
I'm Duncan, also Business Development from Power Ledger.
So I guess I'll talk a little bit about what Power Ledger is. So what Power Ledger provides the transactive layer in the electricity markets. We work right up the vertically integrated supply chain. So what that means is we can act as the transactive layer all the way from consumers right up to generators. We use a innovative software technology referred to as the blockchain or distributed ledger technology. And what that enables is for us to provide a high speed, large volume, low friction transactive experience that disintermediates the need for a payment facilitator, which leads to our mission, which is the democratization and decarbonisation of the electricity sector. I've noticed, Ashish, you've jumped to the next presentation slide, so I'll speak to this. So that's what Power Ledger does. So, most good solutions are solutions that are built out of really understanding what the problem is. In innovation and disruption, you never want to be a solution looking for a problem. You want to understand the problem and solve that problem. So our next slide please, Ashish. So the problem is we understand the existing energy market, and it's not so much of an intentional problem. It's more or less just a way that the markets have evolved. Is we generally have in the developed world, large, extensive electricity markets. And those markets have evolved in a similar way to how the internet evolved, where we used to have smaller grids, smaller networks, growing, touching each other, forming a larger grid. And now that definition describes most of the electricity systems and network infrastructures across most of the developed world. At this point in time, only 15% of the world's population don't have access to electricity network, but that number is rapidly depleting. So the number of people at this point in time that have access to no network is about 1.2 billion people on the planet. However, I'll get into the opportunity for providing electricity to those people too, which Power Ledger certainly does. But broadly speaking, the problem as we understand it in the existing market is that Sorry, can you please stay on the previous slide? Yeah. So is that we have these large-scale generators that are built on existing sources of fuel. So, quite often we have, coal-fired power stations co-located with coal mines, maybe near a gas point source of extraction. And then what we do is we generate that energy by combusting that fuel, turning it into some type of rotational mass, and then using that rotational energy through an iron coil and a solenoid to generate electricity. That electricity is then transmitted and distributed sometimes over extraordinarily long distances, and then delivered to your house or to your business or to your town. In the previous decades, that certainly has been the best way technologically to deliver a solution. But what we bring is an innovative new technology that can better read what's happening inside the market and settle transactions over those long distances. And with that in mind, we're also able to accommodate far more distributed energy. So we've seen a rise in a massive transition in the types of generation sources in electricity markets globally. That's renewable energies. And that can be renewable energies in the form of wind, in the form of solar, wave, geothermal. And all these technologies can be co-located with their point of consumption. So what that means is there's less reliance on these large-scale networks to send energy over long distances, from the large centralized source. We're seeing this evolution where more and more distributed energy is coming onto the market. And our platform, what it does is it can reward those generators with the same type of treatment a large-scale generator has traditionally received from the market. Next slide, please. So, within that space, there are a number of different issues that have been widely identified, both in literature and in industry reports. One is around control. So when you have a large network like that, you generally have a big centralized control entity. The issue with control is, even in a digital world, sometimes there can be lag between receiving a signal and acting on some area of the network. So although it's a good system and reliability is generally quite high, it could, like any strength, it can also having a centralized point of control can lead to a slow response, and it can also lead to a compromise. The fuel that we're predominantly reliant on globally is still, fossil fuels, nuclear. Renewables are forever taking a larger portion of that market each year, but still by and large, a third of humankind's total emissions come from energy generation. So, pollution is certainly a problem, particularly in the short-term effect of, living next door to a big polluter. We're seeing that it's quite a widespread phenomena in China, for instance, and certainly in parts of India, where, if the wind doesn't blow in the right direction, pollution from a nearby generator can really impede on the day-to-day life of the local residents. In addition, more broadly, really we're burning stuff and putting it into the atmosphere in a way that has never been done before, in a volume that's never been done before in all of humankind. And what that means is future generations will have to pay the cost of that. So the idea now, as ratified at COP21, is that we've committed to these emission reduction targets globally, not just Australia, not just Power Ledger, the world, and we're looking to have zero emissions from the energy sector by 2050. There's questions around access to the network. So even issues around access to the network. So even in developed countries with developed networks, not everyone has access to that network, and being able to connect to the network and generate. There's also a lot of bureaucratic and type barriers. Sometimes you have to pay a fee to participate in the market, and generally there are a lot of kind of friction points in terms of benefiting from those poles and wires that are running down your street. And finally, cost. So cost comes into cost is quite a common theme globally in terms of energy prices. No government wants high energy prices for its constituents. High energy price often includes the cost of the network. So, interestingly, 30 or 40 years ago, the only way to really provide civilization's energy needs was to use fossil fuels, was to use nuclear. nowadays you can provide energy very close to where you're consuming it and very cheaply in a way that you don't have to pay for fuel. You just build a solar farm or a wind turbine or something like that. So, what's happening now is these innovative, disruptive technologies are coming into the market and they're offering much cheaper solutions. And so what it's doing is raising levels of awareness for people that are, paying for dirty energy that has to be transmitted a long way over expensive infrastructure. And they're starting to ask their market operators and their governments, why aren't you offering the low-cost solution, which is tried and true and can be put in today. Our Power Ledger platform, our solution, our transition layer, what it does is it allows market operators, existing incumbents such as retailers and network operators to basically evolve to using new and innovative disruptive technologies, but also to reward consumers for putting in things like solar panel on their own rooftops by giving them a higher return for energy they put into the network. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please.
Yes.
Yeah, great. So, in addition to these problems in the market, we're seeing more innovative new technologies coming into play. So, where I've mentioned, the rise of the renewable energy, which is certainly covered up on a number of those graphics there. We're also starting to see a large non-stationary energy consumer enter the market, and that is electric vehicles. So that can be in the form of a private vehicle, such as your household car. It can also be in the form of a bus or a public transport type service. That would be in the form of either a train or a bus. In the future, potentially an autonomous vehicle that's electric. And finally, that can come in many other forms. But by and large, for the first time in our history, we're going to have this movable load travelling throughout our energy networks during the day, which presents a great challenge and opportunity for policymakers around the world to design to suit that. Because what we'll start to see is all of those vehicles, instead of using energy that's extracted from within the ground, they'll be using energy that'll be supplied by the network. So, from an energy industry perspective, this is fantastic. We're also seeing energy efficiencies coming in. So, although we're seeing, energy demand increasing in parts of the world, per head of capita, what we're also seeing though is that people are using less and less electricity for their household and personal devices, and that's because of things such as lots of regulation in the energy efficiency of household appliances, and also in efficiency and design of electronic products. We're seeing new technologies such as blockchain enter the space. So that facilitates this ability to turn the existing electrical infrastructure into a trading platform or an energy internet, and that's certainly what Power Ledger is a part of. One of the most important things about this particular graphic is we actually show the consumer at the very centre, because philosophically and also commercially, you've really got to have the consumer in mind when you bring in any new platform or any new kind of market participant. The reason for that is, if you're just kind of squeezing in and becoming an extra burden, it's unlikely that that there'll be a widespread uptake if there's any uptake at all. The energy market itself is inherently complex. And, most of us turn on our light switches and we don't need a detailed understanding about where that electricity came from. What we do is we offer a solution that puts the consumer at the heart. It's a solution that rewards the consumer for participation in the network. And it's a solution that by and large is also as invisible as the current system. So, all it would mean is if you're using the Power Ledger platform is that when you turn your light on, the energy is cheaper and the energy is green. Next slide, please. Great. And so what we do with our technology is we enable all of these new innovations through an electricity market to communicate and transact with one another. Well, actually, what I'll do at this point is, I mean, the term blockchain is quite a commonly used term now, but I'll just briefly describe what the blockchain is, just for those, in case there are any participants listening that are not fully across the blockchain. Actually, my colleague Duncan, do you want to give a bit of a, this is one of our blockchain experts.
You flatter me. Yeah, so I guess blockchain is most simply described as a distributed ledger. Basically, imagine a traditional T-ledger that is held by a multitude of people within the network, so and kind of maintained by everyone as well. So you basically, the sort of consensus mechanism we use for our consortium blockchain is proof of authority, which basically means that you have an assigned leader, and then that leader leads a vote on the state of the ledger throughout the time. So as long as everyone agrees on the state of the ledger, then the ledger is kind of maintained in that way. So it differs from the traditional ledger system in that you don't have to trust one person to make sure that the ledger is kind of true, I guess. You kind of trust that the network as a whole has the ability to make the ledger true. So that's kind of what a blockchain is. How we use it is a bit more in depth, I suppose, but at a very high level, it's imagine the blockchain as a distributed ledger maintained by everyone in the network through clever incentive mechanisms.
Yeah, so what we're able to do is democratize trust through that network. So when two people want to transact at the moment, and for instance, in the banking sector, this is probably a great example. You know, for instance, we can all digitally send out hard-earned dollars to our friend. You know, I might owe Duncan 20 Australian dollars, and it'd be very easy for me to pick up my phone and get into my banking app and send that $20 to him. But the reality is when I send that $20, it takes a couple of days for that transaction to be processed. And, you know, in this day and age, that's actually quite an interesting phenomenon, because, you know, it's not like that there's someone at the other end of that app that has to receive the message and manually process it. You know, this is a digital transfer. This is a transfer that is using, you know, the speed of light, ones and zeros. You know, why does it take 3 days to settle that transaction? And the reason for that is because the banking sector is based on a centralized approach of verifying truth. What they do is it takes them 3 days to verify that I have not hacked my phone, that $20 does exist, that I did not just create it, and then to transfer that digitally. So there's no physical transfer, it's just a whole bunch of ones and zeros in the memory bank, move into a whole bunch of ones and zeros in Duncan's memory bank, and that then verifies the transaction. But 3 days is an incredibly long period of time. So what we do, and what blockchain technology facilitates us to do, is to perform the transaction directly. Now, Power Ledger, what we're doing is transacting energy, you know, not through a centralized authority. We provide the fabric, the digital fabric, in an energy network where I can actually transact with Duncan directly in real time. And all the network requires is our software update, no additional hardware aside from existing smart meter technology. Next slide, please. Fantastic. So, Duncan's given a great high-level overview of what the blockchain is. And also, you're more than welcome to add either Duncan McGregor or myself, James Eggleston, on LinkedIn. We're more than happy to field any other questions that come out of this, and maybe we can't get to today. But basically, what we have at Power Ledger and what our blockchain or token system looks like is what's referred as a dual token system. So I won't drill down on in a great amount of detail at this point, but what I'll point out is that we have two tokens. So I'll start at the spark, which is on the bottom of your screen. We refer to this as the customer layer. So if everyone's connected to an energy network, say Duncan and I, say it's a very small energy network, just 2 users, basically what would be happening is, if Duncan was my neighbour and we're connected to the mains grid, and I have solar power, but Duncan has no solar power, what happens is, as I'm generating electricity, any energy I'm not using or storing in my battery will be exported to the network. And that energy, in the case for our example, Duncan's at home, he's cooking dinner, and so he's consuming electricity. And what happens is my energy is going out of my house onto the mains network and into his house. So if the energy retailer is using the Power Ledger platform, what is happening at that point in time is Duncan has a digital wallet full of sparks. And for him to have that digital wallet, there's no difference between creating that wallet and actually having an account with an energy retailer. No difference whatsoever. You just provide your name, your number, your address, all those standard things. You pay money, so your local fiat currency, to the existing retailer offering our Power Ledger service. And then what happens is he gets a series of sparks or digital tokens in his wallet, in his digital wallet. So as he's consuming electricity, his sparks are going into my wallet. And those sparks have a value. They're always indexed at the lowest denominator of the home currency's value. In the Australian sense or in the US sense, in the US example, basically that would be just 1 cent per spark. So for instance, if I'm selling energy for 26 cents per per kilowatt hour, Duncan is then sending automatically 26 sparks to my wallet. And if I want to redeem those sparks in terms of a local currency that I can use, at the shops, then what I do is I go to the retailer's website offering our service, and I can redeem those sparks for cash. If I need more sparks to consume electricity, I'll then buy them off the retailer. So I'll transfer $50 to the retailer, they'll transfer that equivalent in sparks to my wallet, and then the cycle continues. The other token is what we refer to as the power token, and some of our listeners or people participating in this online forum may be out there, may have power tokens. So what power tokens are, is they are a cryptocurrency, very different to the spark. The spark itself is actually a cryptographic token, not a cryptocurrency. You can't sell the spark on an exchange. The power token you can. So from a consumer perspective, from a residential homeowner's perspective, or just a regular market participant's perspective, the power token doesn't have that much utility outside of being a cryptocurrency at this point in time. So what the power token is the best way to talk about the power token is through its inception. We conducted an event called an ICO, or an initial coin offering, late 2017. And what we did is we created 1 billion tokens, 1 billion power tokens, and we sold 350 million of those tokens off on the secondary market. Through that sale, we raised 26 million USD, and we did that basically to provide the company resources in order to grow and to implement our blockchain technology. The value of those power tokens now on the secondary market, the crypto markets are highly volatile, but it wavers anywhere from just under $500 million to about $750 million on a good day. And what the power token does is, in order for an energy retailer or a market incumbent to offer our software to benefit consumers, they have to pay us a licensing fee in power tokens. So that's what ties it to the platform. Most of our company's value comes from the value of the power token. So anyone that has joined us out there that has the power tokens, the way that we see our company growing and developing is through the increase in the value of that token. That's how we get rewarded as a company. And that means that the way we're rewarded for performing well is the same way that our supporters are rewarded for believing in us and assisting us by providing us the resources to perform well. So that's what the power token does. Next slide. Fantastic. So I've just gone through the Australia's first ICO. Now, what I'll point out, and this is something very unique, not so unique, but it seems to be unique to the crypto space, is that what Power Ledger is as professionals, prior to Power Ledger, all of us involved in developing the platform and have been here since day dot. We all worked in renewable energy and also in blockchain. And in this space, as well as being a successful company, what we are is really a movement, and it's about decarbonising the energy market. Our mission itself is the decarbonisation and democratisation of the electricity market. And with that in mind, the democratization of the market, we keep the customer at the center of the platform. So what that means is that we're not just a company providing another software layer to the energy market. What we are is we're a movement driving the energy transition to decarbonisation, worldwide. And what we're doing is just providing the revenue instead to do that. Basically, you can save the planet and turn over a profit, and you can do that in a way that democratically rewards that, and that's the ICO. We're community building. So I guess what I'll point out is that, although most of the large-scale energy networks are in the developed world, what we're also able to do is provide asset finance for people who are seeking reliable electricity in remote and off-grid areas, people that currently have no access to electricity. So what we will soon be launching is a platform called Asset Germination. And what that does is it enables our power token holders, all those people out there that have between $500 million and $750 million worth of power tokens, to then drive those tokens into distributed energy resources, so batteries, solar systems, wind farms, in areas of the globe that have no access to electricity. And what they can do is provide cheap, green electricity to those local people, and they can do so in a way that nets them a stable, long-term return, just like any other infrastructure asset. Power Ledger does not seek to take a brokerage fee. We do not seek to own parts of those assets. All we want to do is facilitate the building of those communities by allowing our power token community to be able to build infrastructure in those areas. The beauty about developing a microfinancing approach like AGE is that it means that those networks will build themselves out in a way that demand will dictate, and it will also enable the people in those areas to participate in acquiring power tokens themselves and then using those power tokens locally to participate in growing the community. Globally, last year, $240 billion USD was spent in the energy sector on renewable energy alone. That's the biggest spend across the entire energy sector. Of that, $120 billion went into distributed battery and solar. Now, interestingly, half of that again, so $120 billion spent on battery and solar, $60 billion of that went into the developed world, and $60 billion of that went into the developing world. So although that's only 1.2 billion people, those are the great opportunities to build the energy network as we should in a way that's decarbonised. And I'll also point out that these are groups of people on the planet that will likely be most affected by climate change. And so, we see ourselves as providing a facilitatory role in helping those communities grow and develop. And from a policy writing perspective, the catch cry is, you can have electricity without an economy, but you can't have an economy without electricity. And furthermore, the network effect. So really what we're doing is building on our network, building on our community's support, building on the grassroots movement, and building on Australia on the fact that we've conducted an initial coin offering that's democratized ownership of our token. And combining all that together, we put the consumer at the heart of our platform and deliver them reliable, green, and cheap electricity. Next slide. Fantastic. So these are just some stats on our progress. So one measure of a blockchain company is the size of its community online. So these are some figures and statistics around that. I guess what I'll point out is that we use a lot of innovative newer services such as Telegram. I mean, it's not that new, but it seems to be quite new to a lot of people. But basically, Telegram, we had the third largest community on Telegram, and so there seems to be widespread support. If you want to follow our progress, keep up to date with our announcements. Telegram is certainly the best way to do that. It's a messaging app, and it's not blocked in most countries around the world. And if you have any questions, feel free to hop onto our Telegram and ask our power mods that are standing by 24/7 to answer your questions.
Thank you, Ray.
You might even see Duncan in there.
Maybe, if you're lucky.
And can I have next slide, please? Fantastic. So, I've talked to you a lot about what the platform is and what we intend to do, but what I'll do is I'll get Duncan to take you through what we're doing.
Right, so yeah, I guess the start of the list is a vector trial, which was an over-the-grid trading environment, sort of a virtual trading environment, as we like to call it in New Zealand. Origin Energy, another very similar sort of trial in the NEM, which is the National Energy Market, which is the eastern states interconnected grid, ranging from Adelaide all the way out to Cairns, something like that. Yeah, Tech Mahindra, we're doing a couple of trials in Pune and Hyderabad, over in India, doing some trading of energy on their office campuses there. BCPG is a large high energy company that's doing a trial of our energy software in a industrial park. WGV is a development in Fremantle over here in Perth, where we're basically doing a trading environment behind the meter there. Nest is a Tasmanian company doing a very similar, again, trial to Origin and Vector. And then Smart Cities are recently awarded grant money from the government to do a sort of an integrated living development in Fremantle again, which is basically going to be integrated water, energy, and smart home systems, all powered by the blockchain, which we're very proud of. So that's a few of the many projects we've got on the go. I don't think America is on that map there, but we've got quite a few projects in America as well.
Soon to be announced.
Soon to be announced, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'll point out that the project listed here on the bottom is a project funded by the Australian federal government. And what we're doing is we're showing and working with the local network operator, so that's the entity that owns the poles and wires, and also the local electricity retailer, to put in a large-scale battery that the city of Fremantle can all share. So that battery will be located at one of the substations in that city. And what will enable is residents with solar and people who just want to buy green electricity to be able to power ledger their energy from their households, from their solar PV to the battery, and use the battery at the substation instead of having to purchase one to store at home. So what we'll be doing is using the existing network infrastructure that requires no upgrade whatsoever. We'll be able to just put in a battery and use our software update to then turn that whole distribution network into an energy internet. The Australian federal government awarded us, $2.5 million. In total, we raised about $8.5 million. And what we'll then be doing is, once we demonstrate how that works, the government and then the purpose of the funding stream is to then replicate that project nationwide across all our cities. From a power ledger perspective, because we're active all over the world, we'll be using that trial to be able to demonstrate the benefits to the world of providing large-scale batteries at substations, not only for the network itself, but also for the consumers benefiting from that, and facilitate high volumes of trading over those existing poles and wires. This is the beauty about electrical engineering and just physics in general. We don't have to rebuild the networks to facilitate this new bidirectional trading environment. Energy can flow both ways through a copper wire. There may be small sizing upgrades that need to be implemented at transformer substations and so on and so forth. However, by and large, the market is good to go. All we do is, through our software update to the grid, is allow policymakers, network operators, retailers and consumers to look at that same infrastructure, but from a different angle, under a different light, and basically provide a whole new service that was never imagined, even when the grid itself was designed. Next slide. Fantastic. So I believe that says what's next. So basically, at this point in time for Power Ledger, so in addition to those projects we've got listed, we actually probably have about, we have a lot more projects that are listed on our website. A lot of our project participants really are interested in seeing our platform up and running and implemented before an announcement is made. So we have a lot more underway, and our customer acquisition base is growing rapidly. There is not a day that we don't have discussions about new projects with new market participants. And I call on anyone that's interested in using our platform from the energy market to please don't hesitate and to contact us. We're more than happy to model the benefit of using our software, and we're more than happy to entertain those discussions. Furthermore, we are a company premised on innovation and disruption. Today it's blockchain, tomorrow it'll be something else. And so, we are really always looking at what is cutting edge, what solves real problems in the market, and what can be used in the market today, and then how does that market look in 15, 20 or 50 years. We're ever expanding our jurisdiction base. So, not a day goes by where we don't speak to somebody from another country wanting to implement our solution. The energy problems mentioned here are problems we all face all over the world. It doesn't matter where you live, what your skin color is, what culture you come from, we all face the same problems, and it's about where you can provide the solution to those problems. And moreover, what this does is it heralds in, and this is what I was alluding to before, this idea of the new energy economy, building on that existing infrastructure to provide reliable, green and cheap electricity to all. Next slide, please. So yeah, thank you very much for your attention, everybody. Just listed here, I've got our website details and whatnot. If you have any questions that you'd like to talk to one of our support officers about, please email support@challenger.io. You'd like to add anything, Duncan?
No, other than thanks for tuning in, guys. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I think we getting some questions now.
Yeah, would you like us to field some questions? Ashish?
Thank you, James. It's the vision for a new energy economy, and Power Ledger being one of the most innovative and front runner in the blockchain and energy market right now, apart from all the startups and players who are present. So we have a few questions from the viewers, and personally I like, so we have one major concern about a lot of people are asking, like, if you consider Bitcoin as a digital currency, and the number and to mine one Bitcoin, the number of units of electricity which it consumes, and so do you think is the technology is going to evolve in the near future time, so that the mining and the electricity consumption which we have to start, like if Bitcoin is a country, then it should have been the 54th most energy consuming country as a whole, right? So these are the few being a renewable energy guy and being promoting renewable and clean energy. So this is one area which troubles us. So can you just think, say us to the viewers that is there any new technology in terms of blockchain which is going to substantially reduce, in terms of the ledger technology?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, you've raised one of the, I guess, one of the most raised sort of comments and critiques of the kind of the current status quo cryptocurrency environment. And yeah, we're very cognizant of the energy requirements of the various blockchains around the world. So you mentioned Bitcoin, one of the heaviest, they're a country, one of the heaviest consumers of electricity. So that's predicated on the fact that they will use the proof of work consensus mechanism. And I mentioned earlier that our proprietary blockchain, or our consortium chain, uses the proof of authority mechanism, which is slightly different in that it doesn't require the crunching of a really complex cryptographic algorithm to kind of spit out or to guess a random sort of proof. It's not as computationally intensive. So as far as our dual token, our Sparks layer is concerned, that's incredibly green already. In terms of the Power token, we're looking forward to Ethereum's eventual move to a proof of stake consensus mechanism. It's on the test net already, so that should be going live, soon if they can work out all the bugs. But yeah, we're certainly aware of the energy requirement of blockchain technology, and we're hopeful that it's going to be improved upon very shortly. So.
I guess the point is that we're not beholden to the same type of energy demands that the Bitcoin is beholden to. So, for instance, our platform started we established proof of concept a long time before we conducted the ICO, and we moved to a commercial trial even before we conducted the ICO. So our platform has been up and running, for a long time. In one of the projects listed in the presentation, the WGB project, that's where we really started to interrogate, what is the parasitic loading on the system? I mean, at a time, we're just like our company name demonstrates, we're half people from the energy industry and the other half of us are from the blockchain industry. And, in terms of our combined experience in the energy market, it's over 100 years. And so from our perspective, we were really examining, parasitic loading of the processing of the transactions. And through that, we actually patented our own blockchain called the Eco chain. And what that means is that we're able to run our transactional layer, for a medium or small scale electricity network, such as the one in Perth, Western Australia, that services 2.2 million people on a laptop, basically. So the energy consumption for our solution is next to nothing, as orders of magnitude less than the Bitcoin. It's a fantastic question, but that's how we've resolved the issue.
There is another question from Imran Ahmad from Dubai. So he's asking, they're a power generation company, and let's say how many tokens they can buy from Power Ledger, and how Power Ledger will help to transact that tokens in the secondary market. So that is how they are asking.
Sorry, I caught the first part of the question. So the first part was how many tokens can they buy from Power Ledger? What was the second part?
And how Power Ledger is going to help transact that tokens in the secondary market.
Right, how are we going to help potential
to transact that tokens in the secondary market?
Okay, cool. Do you want to answer?
Sure. So, as for limits they can purchase, I guess that's determined by the market. The liquidity of the Power Ledger, or the Power token at the moment is quite deep. So I can't imagine there being any sort of real limitation on the amount that they can purchase. In terms of how we, assist, we can certainly, I guess, guide potential application hosts through the process, but we're certainly not in the business of selling tokens to people. We have assisted pretty well in guiding application hosts on the journey through the crypto space. So as much as James sitting down and kind of stepping them through. So
I guess just to be super clear, so we conducted this ICO in October 2017. We no longer sell power tokens. So we sold power tokens in the past at the initial coin offering. Those tokens are now in the secondary market. So they're out there on exchanges. And for an application host to pay the licensing fee for use of our software, say that could be an energy retailer, by way of example, basically they have to acquire power tokens to pay us. Now we'll more than happily walk them through that process. Just we don't control the secondary market. We don't control the exchanges. Those tokens are out there on those exchanges. In terms of people acquiring those, what I would suggest is if you have a project, what we can do is talk through the project, model the benefit of using our platform, and if both parties agree to continue, then what we do is we can walk any market incumbent hand by hand through the process of acquiring those tokens to then pay the licensing fee in the form of power. And I know that sounds like a lot of barriers, so from an existing market incumbent, this is not a demand that's been placed on them before. However, we do bring, quite a significant market advantage to that market incumbent. This could be the incontestable markets. These innovations are the difference between succeeding in that market. We call it fight, flight, or innovate. You can either fight the change, you can leave the market, or you can innovate and, for instance, use our platform. But I will point out, and from a consumer perspective, that the reason we make the retailer pay in power tokens is that when they pay us that amount, we actually hold those power tokens not inside a Power Ledger, but at an independent third party. In the finance world, they call that in escrow. And the reason we do that is because if there's a possible future where the retailer falls into bankruptcy or receivership, that entity cannot reach those power tokens at all. because they're held by a neutral third party. And then what we do is we use the value of those power tokens to pay out all the consumers to ensure that none of the customers, the mums and dads, the families, the people using the platform are then disadvantaged. All of those people will be paid out for any sparks that they might hold. So we really do that as a mechanism to benefit the consumer, and ultimately, the more of these companies that are using our platform, that drives the price of the power token. So every time a retailer purchases power tokens, it drives up the value, and it benefits all of our supporters out there that participated in our ICO. I'll just finish on saying though that what we're finding now is as retailers that approach us have power tokens already.
Yeah.
So now, initially we were walking every single one of our application hosts through the process, and we're more than happy to do that. It's obviously no chore for us, and we live and breathe this. It's very easy for us to do. These exchanges, they conduct hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions every hour. We're not talking small outfits here. But I guess I'll just point out that it's becoming increasingly the norm where our customer base already have the tokens to begin with.
James, I think we'll be running short of time. We have just last one question from Samir from Tata Power. He's from India. So his question is like, what are the challenges Power Ledger faced from the incumbent point of view till now? So that is one question. What are the major challenges you have faced throughout till now?
Yeah, fantastic. That's a great question. So I guess from our perspective, there are many other players in the blockchain space. Now I will attempt to keep this concise. There are many other players emerging in this space. In 2016, Bloomberg wrote an article about us and identified about 12 other challenges. Now it seems that every man and his dog is conducting an ICO in the energy market, and that's fantastic. We welcome competition. You can't have a market without competition, so bring that on. In terms of the barriers and challenges, look, we come from this space and we work in the energy market and we understand the problems that the energy market face. I know it can seem on face value that we may seem to pose a threat, which is absolutely not the case. So what Power Ledger does is we see our platform as an evolution of the market, and we don't see it as an extinction event to participants in the market. Look, by and large, our software, it replaces the software that was created in the 1970s, and what we've done is just replace that. So with that in mind, what benefits does the market have, or market incumbents have, to use our platform? Well, those benefits are, if you're a network operator, if you own poles and wires, at the moment, battery and solar means that in 10 years, a lot of your customers may be wanting to disconnect. At the moment, in parts of Australia, it's cheaper to have a battery and solar system and be off the grid than it is to be on the grid buying electricity. And that's because you have to pay for all that infrastructure. So what we do is we allow the network operator and the retailer, who make their money by buying energy in one market on the electricity network at a wholesale market and then selling it to consumers, we allow them to facilitate transactions. So what it means is the consumer benefits by being able to send their energy next door through the network. The network operator will take a fee for that. They'll charge a couple of cents. And the retailer themselves, what we're doing is we're providing them a very efficient administrative software that reads meters, provides invoices and settles payments. So, I guess those are both the challenges that face the industry in terms of the energy death spiral, grid defection, and also struggling to innovate. And with those benefits, we can reduce administrative burden and help the network operators and retailers use the market in a way that has never been used before.
There is one last question from which is, I think it's a little important. Being it's a new technology and lot of talent pool is required to take this technology to the next level. So do you think is there any courses or universities should sign up, and the young generation Z should be going and pursue blockchain and as a technology and a career in future? So what will be your point of view on that?
In terms of what's next? What technology is next? Is that the question?
No, so I'm telling, I think it's a new technology. Blockchain is a new technology, so there will be a lot of talent which will be required in the market to sustain the technology and evolve with time, right? So how you see people and as it as a job and as a career in future for all the young talents and talent in terms of as a career in future.
Yeah. Look. My personal advice for that is although I see the virtues in a STEM education, like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. My honest advice to people who are looking to study or continue their studies is to do something that they enjoy, because these types of innovations are not just premised on the development of software. These innovations are actually transdisciplinary co-creation processes where multiple disciplines come together to help create these solutions. The days of one profession solving a particular problem are kind of over. In order to get to the problem solving abilities such as colleges or even any legitimate innovation now, it requires legal, technical, commercial, even in terms of even qualifications such as philosophy and policy writing, they all come together. One thing to keep in mind is, there are so many programmers out there that are not Gen Z, that are not Gen Y. There are programmers that are Gen Xers, baby boomers. And I can assure you that those people, what they studied at university, if they did go down the computer science path, those codes are long dead. So my real advice would be to be the innovator and to do what you enjoy. And if you do those things, you'll find the right network of people and be always open to consider change.
Definitely.
I remember that when I graduated, my vice chancellor recommended that that we don't be dead fish, and what that means is that anyone can kind of flop into the stream and make a living, but what you need to do is make a living and make a difference. So flop into the stream and swim against the stream, and those are the challenges, and that would be my advice. Duncan's almost a fresh grad. Do you have any advice for people studying out there?
Yeah, my key point of advice would be to take risks. As corny as it sounds, just kind of put yourself out of your comfort zone, and things will happen that you're not going to get opportunities by feeling comfortable all the time. So whether that be taking a risk by sending an email, or whether it be taking a risk by doing something you're not good at, or taking a risk by trying to explain a concept that you might not feel the most comfortable explaining. That's the sort of thing that leads to opportunities that you otherwise might not have gotten. So.
Thank you, team Paul. It is wonderful to have you here today. You literally showed the viewers a lot of initiatives on blockchain and how energy as a market can be really take blockchain as a technology and make real network of decentralized government-backed system. So thank you everyone, thank you all viewers, and from now we'll just sign out, and thank you James and all our viewers who joined today, and please visit our Genomics World space for the next webinars, which will be on floating PV solar technology and for business model on microgrid and mini grid and rural focus. Visit our space, and thank you everyone. We will be signing out now. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.